There are moments in history when religion reaches its peak, but its soul is already dead. Not because people stop praying, but because they pray on autopilot. Not because the temple is abandoned, but because it is packed with empty people. And the most terrifying thing is not atheism. It is a faith that still talks about God but lives as if He is not there. Picture a holy city, hands lifted every week, songs rising on schedule, rituals carried out with perfect precision. But just outside the temple gates, justice is being negotiated like a business deal. The wealthy can buy a verdict. The poor get pushed to the margins. Orphans have no one to defend them. Widows have no one to speak up. The same hands that touch holy offerings are the hands that choke the truth. This is not a loud collapse, no riots, no fire falling from the sky, no alarm bells. Everything still looks fine, and that is the most dangerous sign of all. Because when wrong is wrapped in moral language, it stops being questioned. When injustice wears religious clothing, it becomes untouchable. Welcome to Prophetic History Explained. If you think prophetic stories belong only to the distant past, stay with me. Because what you are about to hear is not just about an ancient people. It is a direct mirror held up to the world we live in right now. The problem back then was not a lack of faith. It was faith that had been twisted. They did not deny God. They kept Him in rituals, in slogans, in tradition, but removed Him from the way they treated each other. Faith stopped shaping their conscience and became a protective shell for greed, pride, and hypocrisy. That is when worship stops being dangerous to the worshiper. It no longer challenges. It no longer hurts. It no longer forces change. And when faith no longer makes a person tremble before truth, it becomes the most dangerous sleeping pill the world has ever seen. In that setting, God does not condemn them for staying away from the temple. He condemns them because they come too easily. They come without repentance. They come without change. They come for blessings with no intention of becoming a blessing to anyone else. Here is something most people miss. Hypocritical religion does not injure God first. It destroys the people who practice it. It lets them live wrong while feeling right. It lets them crush others while believing they stand on the side of righteousness. And when a society reaches that point, judgment is not just punishment. It becomes necessary surgery to save what is still alive. In that moral darkness, a question strikes like lightning in silence. If every ritual is done correctly, if every prayer is said in full, why is the holy city rotting from the inside out? The answer is not easy to hear, because it exposes a truth people resist. God has never needed rituals to be honored. He wants justice to be reflected. When justice disappears, worship becomes noise. When mercy is buried, sacred songs become hollow sound. And this is the moment history turns. Not through religious reform, not through political revolution, but through God preparing to raise up a voice that will shake every illusion people have clung to. A voice that does not come to comfort, it comes to overturn. It does not come to soothe. It comes to wake people up. If you are wondering what happens when God no longer accepts counterfeit worship, what happens when real light shines straight into a faith that has decayed, and what will be left when every layer of moral performance is stripped away, keep listening. Because this journey is only beginning. And if you can sense that these prophetic stories are not just history but a mirror for the present, subscribe to Prophetic History Explained and walk with us. Your support is what keeps this channel bringing content that is deep, honest, and unwilling to dodge the truth in the videos ahead. There is a line people only recognize after they have crossed it. It is not the line between good and evil or even right and wrong. It is the line between the God people think they know and the God who actually is. Isaiah crossed that line in a moment history did not record with thunder, but with a silence that shattered the soul. When he walked into the temple, he was not chasing a spiritual high. He was not waiting for a dramatic vision. He simply entered a familiar space, the place where generations had prayed, where rituals ran like clockwork, where people believed they were closest to God. But in the very place that felt safest, everything Isaiah thought he knew about God collapsed. There was no explanation, no introduction, no preparation, only presence. A high and lifted up throne revealed beyond every human category. Not a religious symbol, but absolute reality. God was no longer being talked about, imagined, or interpreted. He was there. And that presence was so weighty that no soul could stand tall. In that moment, Isaiah did not feel lifted up, he felt pulled down. Not encouraged, but exposed. He did not first see the nation's sin. He saw the truth about himself. Holy light does not have to accuse. It only has to appear, and everything fake begins to melt. What makes the moment terrifying is not raw power, but total transparency. There is nowhere to hide, no language to cover it, no achievements to cling to. Before holiness, every title becomes meaningless. Prophet or ordinary citizen, it makes no difference. Everyone is simply human, stripped bare before the one who cannot be manipulated, cannot be bargained with, cannot be adjusted to match the morals of the age. Isaiah did not bargain for mercy. He did not plead for forgiveness. He did not even dare to talk about the future. What came out of him was not a polished prayer, but an existential confession. He realized the deepest human problem is not just behavior, but nature. Not only what we do wrong, but who we are when we stand before absolute holiness. And right at the point of total collapse, something nobody expects happens. Holiness does not destroy, it purifies. Not by lowering the standard, but by transforming a person so they can stand before the standard. The touch from the holy place did not make Isaiah safer. It made him truer. This is a principle history often ignores. God does not send people who feel confident in their own righteousness. He sends people who have been broken and remade. Mission does not begin with talent, knowledge, or enthusiasm. It begins when a person no longer dares to speak about themselves and has enough courage to stand still and let God define them. Only after holiness silences every inner voice does a question come. Not a command, not pressure, just an invitation heavy with responsibility. Who will go? Who is willing to step into a mission that is guaranteed to be rejected, misunderstood, and refused? The answer does not come from a burst of bravery. It comes from deep surrender. When Isaiah responds, he does not speak like a winner. He speaks like someone who understands the cost of truth. He knows the road ahead does not promise glory. It does not guarantee success. It does not offer acceptance. But he also knows refusing is no longer an option. What makes this mission heavy is not the assignment, but the outcome that is announced in advance. A people will hear and not understand. They will look and not see. They will refuse not because they lack information, but because they have grown comfortable living inside their own darkness. Isaiah is not sent to win arguments. He is sent to bear witness to truth even when truth is rejected. And yet, inside that severe warning is a thin thread of light that cannot be put out. Not everything will be destroyed. Not everything ends in rubble. A remnant will remain. A living root will survive the fire. A seed will be preserved for a future the present cannot see. That is where Isaiah's role becomes clear. He is not called to be successful in human eyes. He is called to be faithful in an eternal plan. He does not stand among the people as a social reformer, but as a witness who has seen holiness with his own eyes and cannot go back to living the old way. From that moment on, every word Isaiah speaks is not fueled by rage or disappointment, but by a painful certainty. When a person truly meets God, they cannot keep pretending. And when holiness has spoken, history has to move, whether people are ready or not. A nation's story is not written only by battles and treaties. It is written by what people trust when they are afraid. When crisis gets close, the true nature of power shows itself most clearly. Not in peace, but on the edge of collapse, people reveal what they truly rely on to survive. Some kings believe higher walls will bring safety. Some rulers believe a stronger army will keep order. Some dynasties gamble their future on distant alliances, convinced a signature can replace trust. Power in every form creates the feeling of control. But that feeling is temporary, like standing on thin ice and calling it a foundation. Isaiah sees what few people want to admit. Human power does not fail because it is too weak, but because it believes it is enough. When strength is separated from reverence, it starts eating away at the one holding it. First comes confidence, then pride, then the illusion that even sacred boundaries can be crossed without consequence. Some leaders begin with good intentions, but extended success makes them forget where they came from. When victory piles on victory, humility slowly gets replaced by a sense of invincibility. And the moment they believe they have the right to grab what was never theirs to begin with, collapse is no longer a possibility. It becomes inevitable. In fear, people look to the throne for reassurance. They place their hope in familiar faces, symbols of power, hard promises. But a throne cannot heal a nation that is rotting from the inside. Power can impose order, but it cannot create justice. It can silence resistance, but it cannot silence conscience. When fear spreads, choices become short-term. People reach for bigger strength, no matter the cost. They are willing to trade faith for protection. But Isaiah understands this clearly. Any power trusted in place of God will sooner or later become a chain. What feels like rescue today becomes burden tomorrow. What looks like a shield turns into a flood that sweeps everything away. The deepest tragedy is not that alliances fall apart. It is that people keep repeating the same mistake under different names. They change kings, strategies, partners, but they do not change what they trust. And each time, history moves one step closer to a deeper crisis. Isaiah does not see kings as isolated characters. He sees a repeating pattern. When people hold power without trembling before holiness, power stops serving life and starts serving ego. It feeds the feeling that humans can decide their own destiny without the one who created them. Here is the bitter paradox. The moment people think they are strongest is often when they are most fragile. One wrong decision, one misplaced alliance, one proud moment, and the structure that looked unshakable collapses faster than any enemy could do. Power does not even need an enemy to destroy itself. It only needs to forget its limits. Isaiah understands the issue is not only certain kings, it is the shared trust of the entire nation. When a society trains itself to trust people more than truth, it prepares itself for heartbreak. When it treats strength as the final answer, it locks the door to real transformation. The most painful part of Isaiah's vision is not military defeat, but spiritual blindness. A nation can lose walls and rebuild. It can lose a throne and restore a dynasty. But when it loses the ability to tell the difference between strength and holiness, it loses the deepest foundation of its existence. So Isaiah's message is not designed to weaken power, but to put it in its rightful place. Power is not the enemy, but it is a terrible master. When it is worshipped, it destroys. When it is placed under reverence for God, it becomes a tool that serves. Judah's history makes it clear the real question is not whether there is a king, but who truly sits on the throne of the human heart. In that setting, Isaiah is not only talking about the collapse of dynasties, he is preparing minds for a larger truth. If human power always fails, then real hope cannot come from another throne, another army, or a smarter strategy. It has to come from a completely different path, a kind of redemption power never imagined. There is a moment in the flow of revelation when human expectations get turned upside down. After the failures of power, after thrones collapse and alliances dissolve, the biggest question is no longer who is strong enough to save, but how salvation could even happen. People assume the solution must come through greater force, a harder hand, a louder voice. But at the peak of despair, an image appears that breaks every familiar logic. Isaiah does not see a warrior riding in on a chariot. He does not see a leader assembling an army or a new king taking the throne. What he sees is someone who does not seek attention, does not assert dominance, does not impose his will. A servant who does not argue, does not shout in the streets, does not use force to make people believe. In a world where the loudest voice usually wins, the silence of this figure becomes the most shocking thing of all. This is not weakness. It is a kind of strength humans have never defined, a strength that does not need to prove itself, does not need to defend pride, does not need to strike back. Isaiah sees that what makes this servant different is not only what he does, but what he is willing to carry. When people run from responsibility, this servant steps straight into the center of pain. When people look for someone to blame, he chooses to bear consequences. What makes this vision hard to accept is not physical suffering alone, but the moral reversal behind it. The righteous one is not celebrated immediately. He is misunderstood, rejected, treated like a failure. Society looks at him and concludes he is being punished, that his fate proves he was wrong. But Isaiah looks deeper and sees a truth that shakes him. This is not punishment for this servant's sin. It is substitution for the sins of others. Justice is not erased here. It is carried out in a way humans never expect. Instead of wrath landing on the guilty, it is borne by the innocent. Not to excuse evil, but to break the cycle of revenge and violence. Isaiah understands that if sin is handled only through direct punishment, history will keep spinning the same bloody circle. But if there is a path where sin is exposed, condemned, and also carried, then a different future can open. What makes Isaiah tremble is not only the level of suffering, but the willingness behind it. This servant is not forced. He is not swept away by events he cannot control. He walks into the path with full awareness of the cost. His silence is not surrender, it is choice. His refusal to strike back is not powerlessness. It is the decision to hold a purpose greater than his own life. In this vision, death is not the final period. It is the meeting point of judgment and hope. Isaiah sees that after carrying the pain of many, this servant does not vanish into forgetfulness. There is a reversal deeper than physical miracle. Life appears after sacrifice. Meaning is born from loss. And through the road the world calls failure, true victory is revealed. Isaiah begins to understand this is the answer to every failure of human power. When imposed strength produces resistance, sacrifice produces transformation. When violence only changes who holds power, suffering changes the heart. This servant does not come to conquer territory. He comes to conquer the separation between humanity and God. He does not come to build another short-lived dynasty. He comes to open a path of reconciliation that outlasts time. The revolutionary weight of this vision is not only the message, but what it does to every value system. If salvation comes through suffering, then the world's definitions must be re-examined. Success can no longer be measured by force. Honor can no longer be tied only to winning. Power is no longer the ability to make others bow, but the ability to give yourself for the life of someone else. Isaiah knows people will struggle with this. They will search for saviors that match their expectations. They will stumble over a path that is too humble, too painful, too opposite to survival instinct. But he also knows no other path can heal a world that has been twisted so deeply by violence and self-centeredness. That is why, in the middle of warnings and judgment, the vision of the suffering servant becomes the center of hope. Not easy hope, not quick comfort, but hope deep enough to pass through pain without breaking. Hope that does not deny reality but transforms it from the inside. A redemptive path that is not built on destroying enemies but on carrying sin so enemies can become new people. There is a dangerous misunderstanding people often carry when they face ruin. They assume God's goal is to bring everything back to the way it was. But Isaiah sees something completely different. What is coming is not nostalgic restoration. It is a root-level recreation. When familiar structures collapse, God does not patch up history. He rewrites it. Exile does not begin as a spiritual lesson. It begins as real loss. Homes taken, the temple burned, national identity shattered. The symbols that once guaranteed divine presence are gone. The rituals people leaned on are gone. The center they return to is gone. And in that emptiness, an aching question rises. If everything has been stripped away, is God still there? Isaiah answers with a vision that is both terrifying and comforting. God is not trapped in stone and wood. He does not depend on borders or institutions. Even when the people are carried far away, he steps into what they assume is the farthest point of abandonment. Exile is not proof of absence. It becomes the stage for a deeper presence, a presence humans cannot control. Then Isaiah says something shocking to every familiar definition of deliverance. The one God uses to open the door home is not from the chosen people, not marked by religious identity. It is a foreign king who does not share their tradition and does not belong to the covenant, yet is named long before he appears on the stage of history. The message is clear. God is not limited by the labels humans build. He will use whatever instrument he chooses to accomplish his purpose. But Isaiah does not stop at geographic return. Going back to a city does not equal healing. Rebuilding a temple does not guarantee transformation. What he sees reaches far beyond coming home. He sees comfort for people crushed by history. Not cheap reassurance, but a deep commitment. Suffering will not define the future. Sin has been confronted, debt has been dealt with, and the door of hope is open not for the strong, but for the exhausted. Isaiah begins to speak of a return that does not need a map. A road opening through the wilderness. Low places lifted up, obstacles flattened. But this is not just geography. It is the language of inner transformation. God does not only bring people out of captivity, he brings captivity out of the people. He heals how they see themselves, how they understand him, and how they live with one another. In that vision, strength is no longer measured by domination, but by support. Faith is no longer the privilege of a single group, but an invitation to everyone who is tired. A door that was once tightly shut swings wide open. Worship is no longer defined by stone walls, but by a heart willing to answer truth. The ones history pushed to the edges are invited into the center of grace. Then Isaiah sees beyond return and comfort into something even bolder. Not only an improved society, but a new order of existence. A world where violence is no longer the default language, where life is no longer fragile before death, where justice does not have to fight to exist, because it has become the foundation of every relationship. In that world, the memory of suffering no longer controls the present, not because it is erased, but because it has been overcome. Work is no longer a meaningless burden. Lifespan is no longer shortened by injustice. Harmony extends not only between people, but between humanity and all creation. Isaiah describes this not as a fragile dream, but as a promise backed by the Creator himself. The depth of this vision is not surface perfection, but its source. This new world is not built by human strength, not maintained by power, and cannot be destroyed by old failure. It is the outcome of a long process where judgment cleanses, sacrifice opens the way, and grace completes what humans could never finish on their own. Isaiah ends not with a call to fear, but with an invitation to live with hope. Not a cheap hope that pretends reality is not real, but a hope strong enough to move through ruins without being swallowed. A hope that insists history is not drifting toward nothingness, but being guided toward an ending where every tear has meaning and every wound has an answer. This is not only a promise for a nation once exiled. It is a promise for all humanity that the end of the story is not decay, but life reborn into a completely new reality. The deepest lesson for us today is not simply learning more history, but examining our conscience. First, be honest about your faith. Is it changing the way you live, or is it just a moral shell that makes you feel safe? Second, be careful with power and control, whether it is money, status, or influence. Anything we trust in place of God will eventually betray us. Third, learn to see suffering not only as disaster, but as an opportunity to be reshaped. God does not waste ruins. He uses them to build something more lasting. And finally, live with long-range hope. Not hope that escapes reality, but hope deep enough to stand steady in injustice. Keep doing what is right, and trust that the end of the story is not darkness, but renewed life. If you sense these prophetic stories are speaking into your life right now, join the Prophetic History Explained community so we can explore more together. The prophets, biblical history, end times meaning, and how these ancient truths still speak to the world today. And do not forget to subscribe, because your support is what keeps us bringing content that is deep, honest, and truly substantial in the videos ahead.